Welcome to IABM TV. I'm delighted to be joined by Chris White, Operations Director from Friend MTS. Chris, welcome.
Hi, Darren.
I'm delighted to be able to talk to you today. The world's going through this COVID pandemic at the moment, and with your experience in piracy, are we seeing any kind of new trends right now because of the pandemic specifically that we're going through?
There's probably a few bits to that question, Darren. So first of all, there's kind of shifts in the legitimate video market that are kind of, feeding the piracy distribution side, if you like. So legitimate sources of content, during the COVID pandemic, you're seeing movies go straight to streaming instead of cinema. You're seeing virtual ticket services pop up all over the place to try and recreate that experience that people would get from going to a stadium. And obviously, just generally, you are seeing a proliferation of more and more OTT services coming to market, just generally, not just during the pandemic. So really what this means is that obviously pirates and pirate service operators have easier access to sources of content. There's more of them around, they're easier to grab. So obviously there's easier for them to provide that content to their consumers as well. And then really there's the shift in the piracy distribution that we're seeing. So, new services popping up, trying to take advantage of the supposed increase in demand during the pandemic. New IPTV services, we've seen Popcorn Time come back, we've seen Popcorn Time Kids come to fruition to try and, placate those kids while they're off school. But obviously they're suffering kind of the same problems that pay TV operators are, right? Live sports is reduced, so people are moving away from their services as well. And since there's no live sports, they're having to kind of make up additional content to try and make their services attractive. So, we're seeing increases in linear streaming, increases in VOD catalogs. And interestingly, special offers and sales and things like that, free periods, price reductions, all of those kind of things really to try and make consumers use their services. Then kind of on the other side, what we've got is kind of piracy consumption side or the opposite to the distribution side. So, the propensity to pirate during the pandemic may be higher due to, economic reasons. People may have less money to pay for things, or just social reasons. People are stuck at home with less to do and more time to watch stuff. But really the biggest trend that we're seeing during the pandemic isn't really related to piracy per se. It's related to the large volume of articles that are talking about piracy. So people are saying there's articles all over the place with people saying there's a huge increase in piracy consumption. And really, some of the articles put this down to an increase in links to piracy, which, tangentially represent the supply side, but more realistically, really just represent visibility of that piracy. Just because there's more links out there doesn't mean there's any more piracy. It just means it's been advertised more. And then on the other side, really, reports kind of try to seek to say that there's an increase in piracy consumption, really based off things like web analytics, like similar web and things like that, rather than actual measurement of consumption, which is obviously very hard to do. Now, there's a couple of points to those kind of statistics that we're seeing in the market. Firstly, and I guess let's just assume for now that those figures are actually accurate, that's only really looking at web-based piracy, if that was the case. And obviously that's only one part of the whole pirate ecosystem. You've got Kodi add-ons, smart apps, Plex plugins, ISPs, all of these places where people are watching and consuming piracy. So just to focus in on one aspect of that really doesn't give a holistic view. And then really coming back to that point around accuracy, there's a large doubt around using such analytics as an accurate measurement of piracy consumption, because the way that these similar web and similar like services work, the people who are actually feeding the analytics for those services are unlikely to agree to be monitored if they were watching piracy services in the first place. So really even taking that as a guide is really not a great way of doing it. So in summary, we're seeing a lot of these stories, but really we don't believe the stats behind them. They may be right, piracy may have increased, or piracy consumption may have increased during the pandemic, but the way that they're trying to explain and go about it, we think is kind of a bit flawed. We do believe that the use of data to inform and drive management decisions, but we also believe that that data has to come from a true source of measurement and be representative of the entire population it's seeking to depict. So you've got to aggregate that data and use it in context to justify any assertions that you're going to draw from it. I mean, it is an interesting topic, and like I say, there is a lot of focus on it in the media at the minute, and we're going to kind of prepare a couple of blog posts to put our view out in the coming weeks, really, to kind of say where we're coming from on that.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I know from talking to other content owners, one of their concerns in terms of moving to the cloud, which is obviously a technology trend that we're seeing at the moment, has always been piracy. And so some of that bad press that you mentioned isn't going to help people adopt technology faster. Yeah,
especially, like I say, especially when it's not based on true measurement of piracy. If people are basing their business and strategy decisions on stats that come out that aren't really based on true measurement, it kind of does upset the business model a little bit.
Yeah. You mentioned when you were speaking about live sports. Now, obviously, lockdown is easing, and live sport in the UK at least will be coming back shortly, albeit to empty stadiums. How is Friend MTS supporting its customers during that period?
So you're right, absolutely. Live sport is starting to come back, not just in the UK, but across the world. We've got things like Bundesliga has resumed, NASCAR has resumed, tennis has resumed. Other football leagues across Europe, Premier League, La Liga, Serie A have announced their plans to resume. UFC. But you're right, obviously these are kind of under coronavirus safety guidelines and behind closed doors. And that's really bringing about some interesting changes to the market, because really what we're looking at is more content being broadcast than before the pandemic. To try and fill that gap of people going to the stadiums, every match is now being broadcast rather than, editorially selected matches or highlights, etc. So really we're seeing interesting statistics around that. People have missed sports, for the last 2.5, 3 months. It's getting a lot of attention now. It's started to return. The viewing figures for Bundesliga and NASCAR, very high indeed. NBC had IndyCar on Saturday night prime time in the US, and it ranked as the highest NBC IndyCar on record, up 38% from the previous year. So, people are loving the fact that that sport has returned and demand is high, but we're also seeing shifts from our customers in trying to cater for those trends. So, like I mentioned earlier, virtual season ticket offerings, additional matches being broadcast, and how operators really want to start monetizing that content post COVID-19 with the increased roster of broadcast events that there will be. So obviously, from the customer's perspective, protecting their content revenues is now more important than ever as live sports start to return. But really, from our point of view, in the delivery of our services to our customers, it's kind of business as usual. Yes, there is more content, but the services that we offer can cater to that. But really, the key shift, with more and more content being made available for in-home consumption, ACID, which is our subscriber level watermarking service, really does start to become ever more important as a kind of a key weapon to try and fight that for-profit piracy that we're seeing, that is obviously trying to threaten the pay TV business model, not just during the pandemic, but kind of ongoing.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Chris, that what you're talking about in terms of how you're supporting your clients, I guess what you're trying to say there, or my interpretation, I should say, of what you're trying to say is that all of your services are scalable.
Absolutely.
So the fact that we've got a lot more content coming out now is no real problem for you guys.
No, so I mean, yeah, we deal with content producers and content owners and broadcasters, right from the very small guys who have the odd event now and then, right up to the large sports leagues. So yeah, our platform and our services are absolutely scalable and can deal with that demand.
Yeah. And then you went on to talk about watermarking, and I know that forensic watermarking is a key weapon in the battle against piracy. So how does that stack up against other technologies?
That's a good question. It's one we've actually been doing a fair amount of work on as a company to try and really explain our position of watermarking in the market and how it kind of compares to other technologies. There's really quite a few things you need to consider when you're starting to look at selection of a watermarking technology to protect your content. So really, there's firstly the application of where you're going to integrate that watermarking. So client composited watermarking that our ACID service is built upon, can be deployed across all content types and all device types, whether that be set-top boxes, regardless of middleware, software stack, chipsets, age of platform, it really is agnostic. And on the flip side, we can cover all OTT apps, devices, players. Then there's also kind of the deployability to consider. How easy is the solution to put into your system? With client composited compared to others, there's really no heavy lifting to do on the engineering side, on the head end. So there's no work to do in your content encoding, preparation, distribution chain. So you can leave your head end untouched, which is obviously a huge advantage in terms of ease of deployment. And then obviously there's the cost of deployment to consider as well. With other types of watermarking, that heavy lifting incurs huge engineering costs, but also additional ongoing operational costs as well. So we really believe that client composited watermarking is not only the easiest deployed, but also kind of the most cost effective. Then thirdly, really there's what types of content are you trying to protect? Is it live? Is it VOD? Is it something else? Because with client composited watermarking, as I mentioned, with no work to do in the preparation and distribution chain, that makes it ideal for a live scenario, live sports, live premium content, because there's absolutely zero latency added to the content preparation chain, which is obviously, everyone's talking about low latency these days. It's a key shift in the market, so that's really important. And when we're talking about live as well, the time to extract that watermark from that content when you find it is obviously key. And again, client composited watermarking offers the fastest extraction times compared to other watermarking technologies. A few other things you need to consider really is whether your chosen technology will allow you to continue to work with your multi-CDN architecture. So again, client composited is agnostic to a multi-CDN architecture being in the client, so there's no problem there. Obviously, multi-CDN is a big shift in the market nowadays, and everybody requires that. But finally, really, and most importantly, is the watermarking technology that you choose. Is it really deployed in the real world, and is it proven in the real world to be robust against pirate attacks? And that's really the key one in our mind. And with our ACID service being the most widely deployed watermarking solution in the world, actively daily in tens of million devices worldwide, really it is hardened against pirate attacks, real world examples of piracy, unlike other watermarking technologies such as AB variant watermarking, which we know can be easily circumvented by pirates. So really, if the watermarking technology you choose isn't robust, then pirates will find a way around it and circumvent it. And we're actually finalizing a white paper that's going to come out in the next couple of weeks, which explains all these considerations you should be looking at in a lot more detail, and obviously the pros and cons you need to consider when selecting a watermarking solution. So keep your eyes open when that comes out.
Well, I will. That's a good tip, and I do look forward to that. Obviously, you're investing a lot in development of your products and services. Have you got anything else in your R&D box that could be coming out shortly that will be exciting for customers?
Yeah, well, firstly, really, obviously being an anti-piracy and security field, we're constantly developing and coming up with new technology, new techniques. You've always got to stay one step ahead of the pirate. So yeah, constant development, really. I always kind of come up with the analogy of antivirus software on your computer. It's always got to be up to date. It's always got to be the latest thing to keep you ahead and keep you secure. But we do have actually a bit of interesting R&D coming to fruition shortly, which is a service that I'd like to mention, which relates to the ACID watermarking service that we've just been discussing. And really, where our ACID client composited watermarking is deployed in a connected OTT, hybrid, or IPTV D2C platform, we have a new service that we're calling ACID IQ. So this is really designed to provide customers with deep insights into the characteristics and behaviors of their subscribers, giving them perspective and intelligence that customers need to protect their content and revenues. So ACID, alongside ACID IQ, is really the only watermarking service that allows our customers to detect fraudulent behaviors as they're happening, receive alerts in real time as those things are happening, by identifying and flagging subscribers who are repeatedly displaying those behaviors. So by analyzing kind of common patterns of behavior using machine learning and big data techniques, ACID IQ is able to identify and reveal what we're calling personas associated with behaviors of offending users. And this rich analysis provides kind of critical intelligence to customers that allows them to address revenue leakage, look at content protection vulnerabilities within their platforms, and deter piracy of their premium and exclusive content. So really, the key thing that AssetIQ does is identify unusual behaviors among playback sessions, which could indicate a likely source of piracy, whether that be a compromised account, or potentially other business affecting issues like credential or account sharing as well. So we've been working on this, and our product management methodology ensures that when we're ready to release a new product to the market, we're 100% sure of the business value it can bring. And we work with our existing customers to trial our new products in their platforms for some time to support this data and to ensure that the products are effective. So we've been trialing AssetIQ since the beginning of this year with some select customers, and we've been finding some very interesting insights actually. Using the data that we're gathering from AssetIQ, we've actually been able to predict 70% of the accounts that will be used as a source of piracy in future. Before we've actually gone and detected them and extracted their ID with a watermark, we have found those previously. You know, it's nice to have the confirmation later on that we found them and got the watermark and confirmed it is them, but we've actually been able to predict in 70% of cases where that piracy is going to come from. So it's kind of bringing additional value to our customers who use Acid, and we hope to share more as this exciting product really as it develops.
Well, that's really good news because, you know, even if I take a medical analogy, prevention is always better than cure.
Absolutely.
So,
the best piracy was one that was never there in the first place, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I can imagine that the marketplace will be very excited when that technology finally comes out and of the R&D box. So yeah, that's really good news. So in terms of what you're working on, obviously you just shared that latest development, but where is, you know, I guess it's a banal question in a sense, but where is piracy going?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. It's one we get asked quite a lot, actually. I mean, as we've discussed earlier, there is more and more legitimate services offering, you know, premium or exclusive content, and obviously pirates will use those to source their own content into their own services. In addition, you know, pirates, you know, as more and more services come online, subscribers may not be inclined to pay for a multitude of different services. You know, they don't want 15 different services. They're not going to pay for 15 different services. Hence, piracy isn't going to go away anytime soon. You know, people are still going to want to watch all of that content, and so pirate services will continue to provide it. So it's really important that owners of premium content, operators of D2C platforms, consider piracy as part of their wider business strategy. And we're hopeful that tools such as AssetIQ will give the businesses some insight into the intelligence required to facilitate this. But, you know, anti-piracy isn't a big bang approach. There's no magic silver bullet that you can just deploy and solve the problem. But there are things that people can be doing, you know, in a roadmap or a progressive type scenario to start the ball rolling. You know, we can start monitoring for the content, looking at the piracy landscape. We can start looking at how pirates are gaining access to that content. And then based on this data, we can start taking informed and strategic decisions on how to iterate and how to take the next step forward to start affecting that piracy, whether that be with watermarking or some other approach. But, you know, like I said right at the very start, I think it's not a guessing game. You know, you really do need to make sure that that strategy and roadmap that you decide to put in place is based on informed decisions and informed data, based on real data, you know, not guesswork. We believe that piracy really is, you know, one of the content owners and operators' biggest threats to their business model. You know, so it's never really been more important to start talking about it and tackling that challenge. And I think the market really is now starting to understand and come to terms with the fact and recognize that piracy really is the threat that it is. And we're starting to see real engagement in the market now to try and tackle piracy using technological rather than legalistic means, which has traditionally been where it's come from. But, you know, what we've kind of always said is expecting cooperation from a hosting or infrastructure provider who is hosting pirate content in far off regions, you know, to comply with legal notices issued in different territories or jurisdictions, or to expect them to engage in some sort of meaningful partnership that would effectively result in revenue loss to them. You know, it's fanciful at best. You know, piracy must be seen as a problem facilitated by technology. you know, with the introduction of and penetration of high-speed broadband. And really, since it's facilitated by technology, it really needs to be addressed with a technological solution. And we are starting to see content owners, broadcasters and operators recognizing that this is a threat to their valuable content services. And that something has to be done to tackle this from a technological point of view. And obviously we hope that Friend MTS can work with them on that journey to protect their revenues and content.
Yeah, sure. I think, I mean, I've actually detected, I guess, an attitude change in terms of, you know, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, piracy was almost, dare I say, an accepted part of the world that we work in terms of broadcast and content ownership. And that as long as you minimized it, you were doing quite well. And I think
there's always been this kind of, you know, unwritten rule that it's some sort of clever young geek in his bedroom who is streaming to a few people. You know, it's taken quite a while for people to recognize that this is, you know, this is a commercial operation. You know, that this is people making serious amounts of money, you know, without the serious amount of cost of acquiring that content legally in the first place. So yeah, you know, it is, you know, we talk about paid for piracy, you know, for profit piracy. It really is a commercial challenge.
Yeah, it's an organised crime for sure, in my opinion. But my point was that I think attitudes have changed with content owners because there are now technological solutions that they can actually use a zero tolerance policy and be able to deliver on it, and which they couldn't previously.
Absolutely, like I said, coming back to the technological versus legalistic thing, you know, they used to just have the legal avenue. Now, you know, things have shifted, and there are technologies that either they can deploy or they can ask their licensees to deploy that will really start to affect piracy. You know, and everybody wins, right? The licensees win from more subscriptions, the right owners win from increased content right values. You know, it's a whole ecosystem that needs to tackle it. It's not just a one-shot thing.
That's right. It becomes a virtuous circle, and I think that's going to be more important than ever going forward with the trend now to move towards SVOD and other OTT services rather than perhaps linear TV. So
yeah, absolutely. You know, you are seeing more content owners and rights owners who have traditionally been licensees going direct to consumer themselves now. And obviously, you know, they've never had to worry about piracy and things like that before. It's always been their licensees that kind of worried about it. But now they're starting to get a bit of a flavour about, you know, some of these things.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Chris, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much. And I will make a note to myself to keep an eye out for that white paper you mentioned.
Excellent. Thanks, Darren. Thanks very much.